This is the Schwinn IC Evolution. When Schwinn and Johhny G parted ways and Johhny G and Mad Dog Athletics took spinning to Star Trek, Nautilus bought Schwinn Fitness and they reintroduced their bikes, calling them ICs. The bikes were available as the IC Pro, the IC Elite, and the Evolution and the Evolution SR. This is an original Evolution. The standard Evolutions have silver flywheel stickers. The Evolution SRs with the new improved Smart Release, which don't have the contamination issue, have a red sticker with a silver star. However, first generation Evolution SRs, or Evolutions and Evolution SRs, had red handlebars. Red handlebar is an indicator to beware, because when they redesigned this bike, this is basically, for all intents and purposes, a Johhny G Spinner Pro with a fancy monocoque style frame. When they designed this frame though, they integrated a different type of a bottom bracket, which was in large part a huge improvement, but the initial integration of that bottom bracket system into this bike, they used a smaller bottom bracket, and the bottom bracket is the bearing assembly that the crank rolls on. And the bottom bracket consists of two bearings and a spindle. The crank arm is attached to the spindle. A normal spindle is tapered at the end, like Johhny G spinners. Most bicycles up to about 1985 had what's called the tapered spindle, where each end of the spindle is tapered, the crank arm slides onto it, and you tighten a crank bolt and it presses the crank onto the spindle. The downside to a tapered spindle is that if the crank bolts aren't kept tight, the crank arm will come loose and snap the end of the spindle, which can lead to serious injury and also costly repairs. The Schwinn Evolution bikes, from the very beginning, use what's called spline technology. And spline technology means that the bottom bracket spindle is not tapered. It's completely uniform from the center to the ends. And splining means that the crank arms fit straight on to the crank arm, and the crank arm never fractures. I've never seen a bottom bracket break on an Evolution since they started making these bikes 6, 7 years ago, which is a huge plus, because when you go into a spinning room or when you go into an indoor cycling class and you see a crank arm on the floor with a pedal on it, that means that the crank arm is broken off the bike. You will not see that happen with the Schwinn Evolution. However, the red handlebar indicates first generation Evolutions, and with a smaller spline bottom bracket. And the reason that's a problem is they use aluminum cups to hold that bottom bracket fixture into the frame. And after the bike's been sweated on and used for a few months, the bottom bracket literally fuses to the inside of the bike. So eventually the bottom bracket will need to be replaced. It's a it's a replaceable part that wears out over time on all indoor bikes. But when this one wears out, it's very, very hard, in some cases impossible to get out of the bike, which means when the bottom bracket wears out, the bike hits failure mode and the bike is toast. When Schwinn and Johhny G separated, Johhny G took the handlebar design with him. The patented Johhny G handlebar has what's called a priest loop for hand position 1 for flats, hand position 2 here, hand position 3 for climbs. On the new generation Schwinn IC bikes, because of patent issues, they had to redesign their handlebar. So the new Schwinns, or Schwinns from 7 to 8 years back to current, they do not have a hand position 1 priest loop here. You still have hand position 2, hand position 3, and you have some extra bars here, which if you're a roadie and you're used to riding on the hoods, this is actually a nice position. It actually gives you a couple of extra positions to have. And instead of having the priest loop here, you can still butt your hands together and get hand position 1 here. The other patent issue that Schwinn had to abandon part of the bike design was on the seat slider. On the original Johhny G spinners, the slider went in and out of a port, like so. On the new generation Schwinns, the seat slider now slides on the outside of the post. The post is all one piece, and the slider moves on the outside rather than moving on an internal port. No real downside to that. It is what it is, but they were patent issues, and you have differences from the original Schwinns to the Evolutions and the IC Pros. Also, on the original Schwinn Johhny G spinners, the towers were square, and they tended to rattle quite a bit or be very, very sticky. On the Evolutions, the Evolution SR, the IC Pro, the IC Elite, they've triangulated the towers, which when the pop pins are loose, the handlebar will move, but when you tighten the pop pin, because they're triangulated, it pushes the tower into the back of the port, which makes this completely wobble free. That's a big plus.